Stop being and start doing. It's very common to say things like, I'm a teacher, to mean that you earn a living by teaching. That in itself isn't a problem, but often, when people do that often enough, they start to make the concept of teacher part of their identity. Making your job part of your identity carries the risk that if you lose your job, you lose part of your sense of self. In the worst case, it may cause you an existential crisis. You may not know what to do with yourself anymore, because if another teaching job doesn't come along, then you're nobody suddenly. You're not this thing that you've attached your whole sense of being to. You're not this concept. And we're currently living in times when job loss is a very real risk. Whereas if you see teaching as something that you do, it's easier to imagine yourself doing other things. So maybe combining teaching with some side gig, or being an entrepreneur as well as a teacher. Another area where people often do this is with negative self-statements. You'll hear people say things like, I'm a procrastinator, or I'm lazy. And that carries a similar risk that if you take those beliefs, if you internalize those beliefs too much, then being something doesn't feel like it's changeable in the way that doing something does. And people prone to depression or with low self-esteem may often find themselves saying things like, I'm a bad person, which has the problem of seeming unchangeable. And it also prevents you from needing to look into why you did the thing that you did when you decided to label yourself as bad. Politically, it's very common to hear people say things like, I'm a liberal or I'm a conservative. In the US, you hear people say, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. And particularly with things like politics, people become so invested in that membership of a political party or that political ideology as part of themselves. They can sometimes find that they're unable to engage in meaningful political discussion because any criticism of the ideology feels like a personal criticism. So, in what areas of your life do you identify as being something, when in reality you're just using that as a shorthand for what you do? Maybe you can start noticing all the times you say, I am something, and ask yourself, is that really true? What happens if that part of your identity is taken away? Is that okay? Can you be okay with it? Because doing so will give you more options and more flexibility, both in terms of finding jobs and in terms of being nice, just being nicer to yourself. Anyway, thank you for watching and see you tomorrow.